Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We are back with our second and final movie review of today, and we're getting back to the Best Picture nominations now. This is the 2019 adaptation of Little Women. This has been nominated for 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Supporting Actress, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay, among many others as well. So this is definitely one of the biggest hitters at the Oscars this year. And it's one that kind of, well, I'll just say it, all three of us on the channel were very much dreading watching. This is none of our kind of movie. Not to go into a movie with, negative perception, always give a movie a chance, but I'm going to go back on my statement just there. I pretty much knew I wasn't going to like this movie just purely because it's not my thing. I've got nothing against people whose thing it is, but I've never watched. I think this is the 7th film adaptation of Little Women. I haven't seen a single adaptation, TV adaptation, whatever it happens to be. I've never read the book, but I knew what kind of movie it was going to be. Like, its reputation kind of precedes it. Nothing against films like this or anything like, or novels like this even, but it's just not my thing. So this was one where I did have to kind of take in like a giant inhale of breath before beginning it, and we've got to get through this thing.
I'm in a similar boat. I wasn't looking forward to this. It came out on Boxing Day in England. I definitely wasn't going to spend my Christmas doing this. I'd not seen any of the trailers. I'd seen obviously promotional posters. I'd seen the cast, Greta Gerwig involved, had a good setup. My unconventional issue is that this was my true realization. I'm not a big fan of that sort of 1800s era. Now, this is really ironic. I said it to you before we hit record. I was like, I know Shakespeare's 100 years before this. I've never really liked his work. I've never been a big fan of Charles Dickens, which is sort of definitely this era. I've always struggled to watch films, watch TV, even Christmas Carol. I'm not a big fan of. There's just something strange because I love my war films, I love period pieces and stuff, but this one era I have always struggled with. I don't know what it is. You mentioned Phantom Thread when you watched it for the first time. Gave me PTSD back to watching that. This is not my cup of tea. That's the fairest way of saying it. I kind of accepted that. I went in to watch it earlier today, and it wasn't dreading. It was more of, right, let's get this done. I've seen the other nominees. Let's get this one done. Let's get it out the way. Let's tick the box. And as I kind of predicted, it just didn't click for me. I kind of said to you after that, I know it's got all these nominations. I can understand a lot of these nominations. I thought it was a well-directed film, but it's not a film that I'm invested in. I didn't particularly gravitate towards any of the characters. I didn't like some of the characters, particularly Timothée Chalamet, who felt like his entire goal was to sleep with every sister in the house. I've never heard of I didn't even know this was a book till a month ago. I think I had this discussion with you and Tate where I was like, this is one of these books that apparently everyone does at school. Well, I didn't. I had Of Mice and Men. And I've heard there's been many adaptations of this film, and not films, sorry, of the book. And yeah, it wasn't really my cup of tea, and it's no criticism of anything but my own taste, I guess. Mm-hmm. I've kind of echoed many times as a view that this has been one of the strongest Oscar years in a long time. And unfortunately, for the ones nominated for Best Film, this is at the bottom of my list. I thought there's some really good things there. I'm not 100% negative. It just didn't work for me.
Same here, and I knew it's one of the classic novels. Louisa May Alcott. It wasn't taught for me at school either. It was taught for my mum though, and she's not a fan of Little Women either. But I do struggle with a lot of those classic novels that often get turned into costume dramas. It's just not my thing. It's just, I don't dig it. But as you said, there are definitely some positive things in there. And the main thing that I wanted to talk about was Saoirse Ronan's character, the main character of the film. She's nominated for Best Lead Actress, reunited with director Greta Gerwig again after, was it 2017's Lady Bird, I think it was, a film that I actually really enjoyed. So clearly, is this going to be that new director and lead actor pairing that we so often see with films and directors? We'll have to wait and see what her next film is. But I like the journey that this character goes on. The rest of the characters just kind of fill out into background noise for me. And one thing, I'm going to go into a negative now before I continue about Saoirse Ronan. I didn't like I don't know if it was the screenplay, but it just felt very airy-fairy, everyone talking over one another, and it just, that whole thing, and I know that they're all sisters, and I know it's a family dynamic, but it just got really irritating for me after a while, just this nonsensical claptrap between all of them that doesn't really amount to anything. And there's lots of dinners and there's lots of dances they go to, and the first half of this movie is just everything I really dislike about these kind of things just all rolled into one, and it just didn't really feel like it was going anywhere. It was only sort of in the second half of the film where it really sort of zones in on Saoirse Ronan's character and her conflict of wanting to be independent, wanting to live the life of a spinster. And I think why this novel's championed, and I've got to give it some credit for this as well. It was released in, what was it, 1868? Yeah, 1868. And the film's also set in that time period as well, so it's contemporary for the time that it was written. And we have to think about, you know, gender roles and constraints and limitations on women and roles in the household kind of thing, societal expectations of women and men at that point, that this must have been a very bold novel to have come out. I do want to say, like, as I haven't read the book, and I think you're in a similar respect to this, we don't know how much of this movie is true to the book, if they've gone in their own direction, obviously with like 2019/2020 modern sensibilities in there, if they have added some tweaks and changes to the narrative or the ending perhaps. But I can imagine it being a big sort of like controversial novel at the time, maybe definitely sort of like for the male audience at that time in terms of novels. So I do credit it for that. And I do like some of the themes towards the end with Saoirse Ronan's character with that. As I said, that conflict was probably the most interesting thing for me. And she does have some very emotional performances towards the end, especially with, what's his name? You mentioned him, the one who wanted to sleep with all Timothée Chalamet. Where he's always loved her and he kind of confesses his love for her, and she lets him down. And then as soon as she's done that, she does kind of go back on it and regret it. Does she really love him? Or does she love the idea of being loved? Is she just looking for a husband to not feel lonely? And we do see elements of that loneliness with her in this lifestyle that she's chosen, but also valuing her independence and making something of herself as a woman in this society rather than just marrying into money or having that security of a family life just because that's what's expected of her.
Yeah, and I think as well, with Saoirse Ronan being the lead, it's astonishing. She's 25 years old. She's been nominated for 4 Oscars. I think she's one of the best young actors. I've not seen Lady Bird. That was one of the Oscars where I missed out on loads of them, and that was one I really wanted to watch. So it's on my list to see eventually. But I thought she was the best thing in this. I think Florence Pugh was not far behind her. There's no surprise that those two are both nominated for the awards. I can fully see that and understand that. And it comes down to the character arcs. I think it's right. Watching it, someone that doesn't know the book, so I could be wrong on this, it's very sort of semi-autobiographical, longer than it should sound. I really liked it. You mentioned the first half was boring. I agree with that. We didn't really get to know them. It all just kind of happened like that, and then it's thrust into them being sort of adults. And what I liked about this was the concept of it was certainly Saoirse Ronan's character. She doesn't really want to grow up. And it's kind of not refusing to grow up, but it's that there's a conversation around Watson says, well, no, I do want to marry this person. I do love this person. You will one day do it yourself. And it felt like an 1800s version of a coming of age film, where it's her acceptance that, you know, her and her sisters, they can't all be this sort of troop together for eternity. They do all have to grow up. And it only really, to me, delves into that in the sort of the last third. And it's about her finding her place within that, which is what I enjoyed. And then I always like the parallels with when it becomes abundantly obvious that what she's handed in is her life story, when the guy says, "Oh, it must end in a wedding. It must end like this." And obviously that's clearly added in because she obviously then does get married, and it kind of cuts between the two of them. So I can understand what it was trying to do with that. And I appreciate the story I told. It just didn't click with me. And again, I mentioned it, I think it's well directed. I think there's good production design and stuff. The script seemed okay. I just don't it just didn't gravitate to me individually and sort of keep me not on the edge of my seat, because I know it's not trying to be that type of film, but I wasn't invested in enough of the characters. When it's an ensemble and you're only really invested in one of them, it's quite. I did really like Laura Dern in it. I thought she was great with
She
her
was
role.
solid. Yeah.
I really struggled with Bob Odenkirk, purely because it's in the same way that we can't see The Mandalorian without seeing Gus from Breaking Bad. When he kind of enters 3/4 way through the film, and it's not even the same accent, it looks like he's just literally walked in off like the studio next door film whatever was on. I think he was miscast, but the casting on everyone else seemed pretty okay. I don't mind Timothy Chalamet. I didn't like his character, but I thought, again, the last third, when his character's arc actually really not begins, but when it kind of reaches his end of him confessing his love and stuff, he's good at doing that. It just didn't have me for the duration of the film.
His character was weird, and I don't know if this is how his character is in the book, or if this is how it translated to screen. We have this big emotional scene of him confessing his love to Saoirse Ronan, and she turns him down. And, you know, he kind of has that attitude of, no, you will get married one day and I'll be watching. And he's sort of like pining away for this love that will never materialize. His like feelings for her never going to change. And then literally within a scene transition. Now, we know that time obviously passed, but, you know, in the context of film, it's sort of how the film's paced and structured and everything like that. He is with just the other sister, and he's macking on the other sister. And it does feel like what you said, like, is this some kind of like lifelong goal of his, that he's this flighty guy who's just going to sleep with anything he sees and shack up with anything that he sees in this family, of these sisters. And he kind of comes across a bit of a dick in that way, but I don't know if that's how his character was meant to be perceived, or if you were meant to say that, you know, he found love somewhere else and it just didn't work out with Saoirse Ronan, and all the better for it because he's in a new relationship. He even says to her, he says, like, the love that what I feel for you is different from the love that I feel for my wife. Like, there is that split there. But I wasn't quite taken with how they got his character across.
No,
you mentioned it. Oh, sorry. No, go on.
They mentioned like his granddad. They kind of bring up being this really nasty guy, and he's really nice and he's fine. And he's one of the likable characters in it too. So it was a very odd character, but I think the narrative structure in this is what throws me a bit as well.
We needed some of that digital de-aging technology in this movie, didn't we?
Well, it's just you're in 1868, and then it cuts to 1861, which is fine. Then when it jumps between sort of scenes, obviously you know it's meant to be a different era, a different year. But it's not clear. I'm not saying it needs to be, you know, you don't need it to say, oh, we've gone back or stuff like that. Just everything looks the same. And the characters, except the younger sister, none of them, and when it's the same actresses as when they're older, none of them actually look any different. So it really throws you off what year it's meant to be.
Yeah, so no, I had that too. I was sort of struggling. You kind of piecemeal some scenes together, but it was really distracting between scenes. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, by the end, you know what it is and what's, you know, some scenes are coming up, some scenes won't. And I think that felt flat. I guess for people that have seen it before, the old versions, or read the book, it'd be a lot clearer for them. But I think as like a new viewer, that made it a lot harder to get through.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that did kind of disorientate me. I've got no problem with it being told in a non-linear style, but you need some, like Irishman, for example. You can tell which moments are them for the most part. You can tell which moments are them for like a young generation, because you know you do see like the different generations and the different decades go by. Maybe not as good as it could have been, but I could at least tell whilst watching The Irishman a lot more than this, for example. Yeah, I don't know how they could have got around that. The only way you could do it is to just like cast different people, which I guess like Greta Gerwig didn't want to do. She wanted to show this connective tissue with the actors. We can maybe argue as well, just go into like another Emma Watson movie, the Harry Potter films, the 19 years in the future scene at the end. None of them look any older. It's like really just like slapped together. But had they have recast, would you have had that emotional attachment to that final scene as much as you would if they used so maybe that's a different example, because that's sort of like the end of an 8-film series, whereas this is just one movie. But maybe she wanted that progression with the actors, showing them there. I think it's just the fact that they don't really act that much differently or anything like that. So it is difficult to follow if you're not familiar, as you said, with like the book or any previous adaptations.
The eras, the only really difference is you get Saoirse Ronan's new haircut.
Yeah.
You don't need something obvious, but when it's, I guess, period to that point of mid 1800s, if you look at 20, like obviously it's ridiculous to compare, but film today will look different to 2012, and that'll be by cars, by costumes, by stuff. But we lived in these eras, so I guess it's easier for us. When it's back then, we don't have that historical accuracy of a 7-year gap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what shows. And you summed up as well, where the characters don't feel like they've changed. And I think that's the underlying issue, that when it's an ensemble piece, it's harder. I know that Saoirse Ronan's the lead in that ensemble, but to me, I kind of followed through her character more than anything, and I just don't. Not that I don't care about any of the others, it's just their stories aren't compelling enough to be invested in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The last thing I'll say about it as well is, and Tate clearly found this out, he pieced out less than halfway through this movie. He was having none of it.
And this is the kind of film he normally loves.
Yeah, his precious Saoirse Ronan, the love of his life, was in this movie as the leading role, going up for lead actress. So I'm very surprised that he didn't support her in that way. But he couldn't make it through. And I think me and you, as we were watching it, we sort of, in individual screens, obviously, we got to almost the same point where we were mentally tuning out of this thing. I think we got probably about an hour in, maybe not quite. But this is a 2-hour, 15-minute movie, and it feels every minute of that length and more. This feels like a 3-hour epic. I'm sure maybe in previous film adaptations, or if this has been adapted for TV, there probably is a 3-hour adaptation out there. I don't know how big the book is, and I don't know how much they left out and how much they kept in. But it was long. But I'm glad this is out the way. But oh boy, I've still got a lot of those performance movies left to get through, and I'm just hoping, I can't even say that I hate this movie. Like, this isn't an awful movie. This isn't the worst film I've seen. It's still a solid movie. It's just not my cup of tea, as you said. This is just not my thing. So that's why the film probably feels longer and feels more arduous to get through and doesn't capture my attention, because it just doesn't gravitate towards me. That's all.
And I can see why it's nominated for a lot of the awards it has.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the story. And I think when you're not invested in the story, it's the same for every film, no matter how great it looks, how bad it. You can be invested in a story that's got the worst set design in history, and you'll still like that story. You could be invested in the most expensive film of all time, and you might not like that story. So everyone's to their own of this. It's just we've all got similar opinions on it. That's not to say it does have its fans. I know Gregor's got a big following. I know this film's got a lot of big names that are fans as well. And I guess obviously for a historical book, bringing in people like Meryl Streep, Laura Dern, best young actress Saoirse Ronan as well, that does give it gravitas and makes it more, I guess, desirable. Probably a lot for sort of literature and teachers too. This will be a film played, unfortunately, for so many people across secondary school. They're going to love that in year 10 and 11.
Yeah, and I'm just, I'd have to, I don't know if I'd read the book. I'd probably read a summary of it, but I'm just sort of skimming through the ending here, like part 2 and everything like that. And it looks kind of wildly different. I don't know if the original book is about the main one growing up and writing the book Little Women, or if that's something they've thrown into the movie to get a parallel there. I don't know if the original ending is the fictitious, the sort of the romanticized ending where she does meet him at the station and they get married and they confess their love for each other and they go on live happily ever after. Maybe that is the original ending of the book. And they've sort of gone in a different direction with this movie. So I will have to read the original plot of the novel or watch some of the film adaptations, maybe. But yeah, I'm just interested to see what they've changed and what they haven't. But yeah, I can see why it's been nominated. 6 nominations. It's definitely going to be a big hitter come next week. We'll see what it picks up. Definitely probably some of the, the production design, stuff like that is probably definitely warranted. But it'll be interesting to see how this performs and if Saoirse Ronan does take it for Best Lead Actress. Although I think that's pretty much just going to go to Renee Zellweger at this point for Judy. But we'll see. It's all to play for. So that'll do it for our review on Little Women. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. Have you seen any previous versions? Do you like this story? If you can give us any information on what they may have changed, that would be appreciated. We will be back probably many days this week trying to get the last few movies done. I still have a lot to watch. but we've got a week today, essentially. We'll have times up also on our social media links, which are coming up right now. That's Facebook /CinemaSavvy and Twitter @cinema_savvy. We will post times that we're going live next Sunday. It'll be into the early hours of Monday morning for UK viewers if you're going to stop up and watch us. But it'll all be on the social media links, so look out for those. That'll be all the American times as well. So yeah, that'll do it for our video. And until the next one, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.